Welcome to ICN Sunday Morning. I'm Vernon Loeb, Executive Editor. Today, we're going to go deeply into an article we published on Wednesday, and I've made sure that the piece is still at the top of our homepage this morning. It's one of the most fascinating stories I've ever read. It's about how scientists are using AI to communicate with whales, and how those scientists, along with their partners, rights of nature lawyers, believe that crossing the language barrier may in fact end up conferring legal rights on whales, the same rights that only we humans currently enjoy. Joining me this morning to talk about this is the author of this amazing piece, Katie Surma, who is herself a lawyer and who covers international climate law for us and focuses on the rights of nature. I think she's probably the only climate reporter in the country on the rights of nature beat. Katie, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start by first explaining how scientists are using AI to cross the language barrier with whales, and how close are they to actually conversing with whales?
Yeah, so my reporting looked at the work of one group that's doing this, the Cetacean Translation Initiative or Project SETI. And they're a team of about 50 experts in fields like marine biology and artificial intelligence, studying sperm whales specifically. Their researchers use new technologies like drones and sensors and underwater microphones to gather a whole bunch of information about the whales, including recordings of their communications. Those communications for sperm whales are called codas, and they're rhythmic bursts of clicks that the whales make by pushing air through their nasal passages and over what are called phonic lips in their heads. And then the recordings of this that SETI gathers, they feed into custom computer models. So think Chat GPT for whales. And those models help the researchers find patterns. The lead linguist on the team explained this as like a metal detector. The AI acts like a metal detector that shows the researchers where to look. And then the researchers do their own analysis, sort of looking in the models to see how it all works. That's like a big 30,000 foot view. SETI's put out a lot of interesting in-depth research papers. So if readers want to go even deeper, they can find those. Um, and you also asked how close SETI is to conversing. They're a number of steps away from that. They said, though, what they've learned so far gives them reason to believe that they can prove sperm whales have a capacity for language. That would be a first of its kind finding. They're not there yet. Right now, the researchers are still trying to figure out the structures of sperm whales' communication system. A step after that would be something, as I understand it, called playback experiments, where the researchers would play back recorded codas to see what whales' reactions are and try to establish some sort of causal connection there.
Hmm.
Yeah, so so a number
Yeah,
of steps away.
yeah. But still, you really, I mean, this article was just incredible. And one quote really blew my mind. Let me read it. It's from a guy named Gasper Begas, who is the lead linguist for SETI.
Yeah.
And in this quote, he's referring to what the whales are talking about. And he says, they have grandmothers, family bonds, and conversations. They mourn their dead. When you listen long enough, you realize their inner worlds might be as complex as ours.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a
Yeah.
big idea. So what are some of the other traits that whales share with humans that they've identified in some of these recorded codas that they're now analyzing?
Yeah, so there's a lot scientists know, both from the sort of communications analysis and then just other research. That's super interesting. David Gruber, the founder of SETI, a marine biologist, threw out this amazing piece of information I didn't know, that humans and whales have a common ancestor. Going back like 90 million years, our two species diverged. It was a land-dwelling ancestor. Our species, like we went and stayed on land, and whales went back to the sea. Um, but we're both mammals, so we both breathe air. As young, we drink our mother's milk. Females babysit each other's children and have cooperative births. One thing I really loved that I learned is that sperm whales have matrilineal societies, and of course, there are human societies that are like that. On the communications piece, this is a very cool too, that baby sperm whales babble before they kind of master the codas like a human infant, right? There's loads of things. I mean, on the other language pieces that they've discovered, the whale codas have vowel-like elements to them, like human vowels. Um, and the probably the most important thing that we know, and we've known for a long time, is that they suffer, they can feel pain. Like us, they've got complex inner worlds, and unfortunately, so much of what we do as humans is causing suffering for them.
Right, right. So last week, the scientists at CETI and a group of rights of nature lawyers at NYU Law School's, let me get this name right, More Than Human Life program, the More Than Human Life program. So they published a paper together, and it had a very provocative title. What if we understood what the animals are saying? And as we've been discussing, they kind of know that with whales to some extent. They kind of know what the whales are saying. But more broadly, what if we understood what the animals are saying? And so in this paper, what was their answer?
Yeah, yeah. And that NYU program, a lot of people know it by the acronym MOTH. Um, the top line answer that the authors gave was that this could catalyze dramatic changes in the law that would heighten protections for whales and give new heft to enforcing existing laws. That the newer protections, they're saying, could be legal rights for whales. And in making this argument, they drew on historic examples of scientific breakthroughs catalyzing improved legal protections. A big one that they talked through were examples with great apes. Uh, to include, this is work that Jane Goodall did, who, by the way, was a big supporter of the rights of nature. What scientists learned about chimpanzees and gorillas, like their self-awareness, tool making, that helped catalyze bans on sort of invasive research on them. The authors of the paper said that just proving that sperm whales have a capacity for language could help improve protections for them, potentially. Uh, and understanding what they are saying, or parts of their language. Gruber gave an example of, previously, to know that sound bothered a whale, you'd have to look for a bloody eardrum. But now SETI can look at changes in signatures in their vocalizations that indicate distress. So this all could provide insights to their suffering, the relationships they have with each other, um, and that all gives heft to potentially, recognition of their rights.
Right. So they're hoping that decoding the language or breaking through the language barrier will help kind of shift public apathy and result in legal rights for not only whales, but all sorts of animals and beyond. They refer to it as a new immense legal world. So from a rights of nature perspective, what is this immense new legal world?
Yeah, so that is a call out to a book by a journalist, Ed Young, called An Immense World. And in that book, he explores this concept of the umwelt, and that's sort of the unique sensory world that every animal, including humans, has. The book, for instance, it talks about how bats can echolocate in the dark, how birds can sense Earth's electromagnetic field. And, we each species kind of only understands a sliver of the world, and it really shows how limited humans understanding of reality is. And what follows from that is that we're unwilling or unable to really consider other species' experiences. An example that Young gave in his book that's really heartbreaking is uh, sea turtle hatchlings are drawn to the ocean when they hatch because the moonlight bounces off the ocean. They're drawn to the light, but artificial human lights disorient them. They go into roads, and he also gave an example of sometimes they'll go into fires that are left over on the beach. So um, understanding those those inner worlds or those different worlds of other species could catalyze changes in the law, hence an immense new legal world.
Mhm. Right. Um, in the paper that I mentioned from last week, the SETI scientists and the moth lawyers, they mention or they come up with sort of two specific rights that might be conferred to whales. One is the right to be free from torture, and the second is the right to culture. So let's start with explain the first concept to us in terms of whales, this notion that they should have a right to be free of torture. What is the torture that they're referring to?
Yeah, well, so they focused on the sperm whales unwell, so to speak. So whales live in the ocean, a totally different, experience of the world than humans, and sound to them is everything. uh, just like imagine being in that world. Some parts of it, light doesn't penetrate, so it's dark. And for whales, their hearing sound is everything, and the roar of a ship that may be like a nuisance to us is agonizing to them. Fossil fuel drilling and mining in the ocean, there's like sonic blasts associated with that are torturous. um, we know that disorients them. It can cause internal bleeding and hearing loss. One thing that the author said in the paper that just like jumps off the page is that a deaf whale is a dead whale. Um, and so they even question, like, we know all of this. Why doesn't a whale's right to be free from torture already exist? Um, and they pointed to the fact that, like, under current laws, the global shipping fleet has grown. Like tens of thousands of whales die each year just from being struck by those ships. Um, Another example they gave was of a mother whale named Juno whose child was slashed by a ship propeller. And she had to watch her child die this slow, agonizing death. If that's not torture, like what is? And if whales could, we could understand what they're saying in those moments, that would just sort of give unequivocal, proof that that's torture.
Right. And that's precisely the kind of thing they're doing. As I understood it, they're recording these clicks and they're combining it with what is happening at that moment.
Yeah,
So they, in fact, I mean, conceivably might already know what kinds of codas the whales are emitting, when they're in agony.
that's right. Yeah, the contextual information. Yep.
Right, right. Um, so what are they talking about when they talk about the whale's culture?
Yeah. I thought this was the really interesting stuff. One of the lawyers from Moth, Ashley, she emphasized something that's in the paper about culture, which is behavior is what you do and culture is how you do it. And we talked a little bit about the similarities between humans and whales. That is culture. They have distinct dialects. They have specific migratory routes and social rituals. They have food preferences that are culturally specific. And like for humans, what is like the biggest piece of culture for us? It's food. And all of these things are passed down through generations. What helps with that is that sperm whales live like 60 to 70 years. So they transmit these things. Uh, when the authors were looking at, a right to culture for whales, they examine the basis of the human right to culture, and that's aimed at protecting all the ways that humans express, their humanity or give meaning to our lives. It protects things like access to ecosystems or sacred places, our language, our customs. Whales have a lot of these things. So do other species, other non-human animals. So if we're recognizing that culture is something worth protecting, why do we limit that to just our species?
Right, right. In the article, there's this incredible scene where I think 11 sperm whales sort of come together while one of them is giving birth. And when a calf is born, it can't quite swim, and it needs to be held afloat by its mother and by others. And so they actually record how all of the whales share in the care and protection of the calf until it's able to swim on its own. And apparently, this is the first time that event had ever been recorded.
Yeah, that's what David Gruber said, that you said he witnessed a first of its kind thing, and surely they've got recordings and are doing some analysis. So I suspect that'll generate some really interesting outcomes there.
Yeah, yeah. So has any country yet granted legal rights to whales? And
Yeah.
is that close to happening anywhere?
Yeah, there's a lot of action in this space. First, I mean, I have to start with Ecuador because their constitution recognizes all of nature, but there's also been specific constitutional court rulings about wild animals and coastal marine ecosystems. Those rulings don't specifically talk about whales, but the implication is that, whales that would migrate through Ecuador's waters would be protected. And it's important to note that on November 16th, Ecuador's president, who's a Trump ally, is asking the country if he can rewrite that constitution, which would almost certainly gut rights of nature. But aside from Ecuador, last year, indigenous leaders from New Zealand and the Cook Islands signed a treaty recognizing whales as legal persons with specific rights. And from what I understand, there's some action happening to take steps to implement that treaty and advance it further. Earlier this year, I reported on steps being taken in Tonga to legislatively recognize whales as legal persons with specific rights, and I believe that's moving forward. I think there's an election that's happening first. And then in Mexico, this is very new. Just I think a few days ago or a week ago, a new lawsuit was filed on behalf of whales in the Gulf of California seeking recognition of whales' rights. And the list goes on. I'll say one more that's worth pointing out. In Washington State, in the United States, a whole bunch of non-binding declarations in towns and cities have recognized the rights of southern resident orcas.
Well, I can tell as a lawyer, you're really excited by this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, as am I. Um, so another mind-blowing quote from this piece you've written, and this is from David Gruber, who's the marine biologist who founded SETI, who's at CUNY, by the way, in New York City. The clouds have parted. The fact that we're getting people to even ask the question, what is the whale saying? What are they thinking? I already feel like we're making progress. I mean, amazing, right? What is the whale saying? So my final question to you is, do you think humans will one day be able to talk to whales?
I have to say that that question's so above my pay grade. But it sure seems like SETI and similar initiatives, like with elephants that are happening, are on their way there. Um, I'll echo something that Susser from Moth, he's founded that program at NYU. He emphasized about this work, that the important thing is really about advancing awareness among our species about the experiences of other species and the way that ways that we kind of mindlessly impact the rest of the world. Each of us can, be more conscientious about our actions, and we can make different decisions. We can choose a world where we don't treat other living beings like a microwave or a car under the law. We can choose something different like other parts of the world have already, and start making laws that treat whales as living beings, treat other, living beings as living beings.
Yeah, yeah. Again, this is just such exciting stuff. And again, if you haven't read the story, please go read it. I think you'll really love it. Katie, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Vernon.
Yeah. And thanks to all of you, of course, for watching and for reading our stories and for supporting our work at Inside Climate News.